Yeah.
My name is Alazar Zewoldi. I'm based in DC. I'm an aspiring filmmaker and just a generalist storyteller. And then I'll pass it on to the next person to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Priscille. I'm a recent grad at University of Maryland, majoring in communication. Currently, I am a podcaster and also trying to get in the field of public speaking, and I'm so happy to be here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Garcelle Franklin. I am a writer and producer of stories for Rocky Mountain PBS. And I'm also an executive director for my nonprofit called the Franklin Foundation here in Denver, Colorado.
Everyone, my name is Adora Luster. I am a romance author and organization development specialist for historically Black college and university athletic departments, and a Big Ten commentator for volleyball.
Sorry. We can't hear you still. You were just fine like a little bit ago.
You were just fine.
So you guys,
I think he's going to log off and log back.
I feel like we can't hear Trudy, but I feel like I can hear him on my Zoom. So maybe everybody else can hear him, but for some reason it's not connecting on Discord.
With us. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone.
Hello?
We'll get it going. Now we can hear you. Just do your video.
Amazing.
There you go.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Chukkky Odogwu. I am a writer, the editor-in-chief of Trad Magazine, an international publication of African ideas and collective memories, and you are welcome to our power panel. It's great everybody has introduced themselves. Thank you all so much for doing that. When we are gathered together in these type of spaces where there's so much melanin resonating through our 5G, it's always important for us to take a second to intentionally reflect, discuss big ideas, little ideas, things that are deeply important to our culture. And before we do that, I just want to big up everybody who has gone before us, all the performers, the writers, the poets, the musicians. Much blessings, much respect to everybody for blessing this space, and also shout out to the people of culture panel. This is so incredible. We have about 20 minutes for this panel. 20 minutes is plenty time. There's a lot to cover. Every second, 1.8 humans die and 4.2 humans are born. So 20 minutes is plenty of time. The first question I want to ask, I just want to go right into it with Alazar. We want to get a sense of. We just want to do a quick culture check, if to speak. You know, the idea of this panel really is to explore the relationships, the opportunities, the tensions between African Americans who have been in America for hundreds and for 400, 500 plus years, and then Africans who might have migrated to America a bit more recently. But also we want to also explore the relationships between these two populations and Africans of the continent. And one of the ways we can really get to do that is through film. We get to see how people represent each other through the stories they tell about each other. And I want to just get a sense of where you feel the temperature is, you know, through your study, through your understanding of film, the movies that are being made. What are Africans and African Americans telling each other through the movies that they're being made? How have the representation in film evolved over the last short while, and what possibilities are beginning to emerge in the way we represent ourselves through our film?
Thank you, Chukkky. Thank you, Nosa and people of culture. I'm privileged and honored to be here. So the question that you're asking is not. I'm going to try to condense it. But in answering, I don't want to go too negative. But one thing I want to point out is that the most racist thing that any person, non-black person could say to me, right, is not nigger. What I've had multiple times being told is that you're black, but you're not really black, right? I don't know if you've immigrants from, Africans have had that while living in America. And one of the most hurtful things is when African Americans agree with that sentiment, right? Because first of all, if you're not black, what do you know about being black, right? But secondly, it's that divide and conquer mentality, right? If we see each other as different, then how can we ever come together? And I think film and media is such a huge part of our lives. We consume a lot of it. We get our mind frames are influenced by it greatly. And over the years, I think I've seen a huge change where African culture has been represented in a better light, right? One big example that all of us know is Black Panther. I was so happy when Black Panther came out, and I saw little African American kids wearing the shikis and doing that. So that's what tells you what the power of film does, right? Like all of a sudden, a kid, a little black child in Detroit or Compton that would have never seen anything about being African or African culture, or even could have had a negative aspect. That's Shaka, by the way. All of a sudden saw something positive, right? Like saw Africa as a positive light and started relating to that, right? To the roots. And now that child is influenced. So I think if we keep that momentum going where we're representing Africans and African culture in a brighter light, and also incorporate African Americans into it, because at the end of the day, we're two siblings who are separated at youth, right? So now that we're coming into our adulthood, we kind of have to know each other. And one sentiment that I truly believe is we're each other's salvation. Nobody's going to solve our problems. We're going to solve each other's problems. I don't know if I fully answered your question. I don't want to take up too much time, but yeah, that's my answer. And thank you.
No, thank you so much for that. And let me just double down on this point you made about us being each other's salvations, and we'll take it to Priscille because and Priscille, I know traditionally your family is from DRC. One of the most interesting people I've met in the history of DRC is this man called George Washington Williams. He was an American Civil War soldier, Baptist priest, Baptist minister, politician, journalist. One of the interesting things he did was in around the 1880s, this writer went down into the belly of Congo after meeting with King Leopold of Belgium. He wrote a scathing letter revealing to the world the atrocities that were happening in the DRC. Without this man's intervention, the mass loss of life that was already happening would have been doubled, tripled, even more. That region wouldn't be what it is today. And I just wonder, so what stories can African Americans, what stories do we need to tell each other about each other? How do we use our stories to build this bridge and to heal each other?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chukkky, for the great question, and thank you, POC, for putting this great event together. So before I answer my question, I just kind of want to take a stand on George Washington Williams and just point out that the reason he wrote that letter exposing the atrocity of Congo was because he had an interest, right? Even though he was a Black American, he had an interest in the African affairs and the African people. And without that interest in the first place, he would have done that. And when you look at history, he's not the only Black American man or woman to be able to have that mindset of global unity. For example, if you look at Malcolm X, he had a great affinity and love for the first prime minister of Congo, Patrice Lumumba. In 1964, he gave a speech about Patrice Lumumba, even though after he died 3 years earlier, he praised him for his courage and for fighting for not only Congo, but also for the whole continent of Africa. So I feel like back then, and it has changed a bit too, but I feel like back then there was a mindset of global unity. And back to your question, I think that's part of the stories that we need to tell about each other, right? And even though, like Alazar mentioned, that we are siblings separated, but in the same time, we all face the same problems. Even though we live in different continents, Our challenges are unique and individual, but we're all connected in some ways. And I've seen that there has been a paradigm shift over the last few years between Africans and African Americans in different sectors. I see it culturally, I see it politically, I see it economically, and politically too, because especially last year with the whole Black Lives Movement, when we look at the whole Black Lives Movement, it wasn't only support in America, right? It was huge on the continent of Africa, in South Africa, in Ghana, in Nigeria, and not only there, but Black Americans and Africans living in Europe and other continents of the world, like we all came together and we all helped each other because one of our brothers, our family was suffering, and vice versa. The problems that we've been facing in Africa with SARS in Nigeria, or Eritrea and Ethiopians, even the minings in Congo, is you had support from people all over. And I think with that paradigm shift and us really connecting back to what we used to be, that's kind of like the groundwork of the story that we tell each other, is one of respect and one of global unity, that we're not fighting this fight alone. And like Alazar said before, is that we're going to be our own salvation. And I think if we're going to keep in the same movement that in that direction, then ultimately we're going to solve our own problems.
Thank you very much. And I think that's we give thanks so much for that, Priscille, so eloquently and expertly put. And I do know we want to talk about the opportunities for collaboration. And I think we all agree that we will be our own salvation. But I don't want to run away from the tensions that exist. And Garcelle, I'm hoping we can speak about that, because to be able to solve it, we have to understand what those tensions are. For many African Americans who are legacy Americans, they were often looked down on by recent African immigrants when they came to America. They sought to distance themselves from Blackness, but also participate in the systematic benefits of Blackness where those existed. I know, Garcelle, you're an activist, you're a journalist, advocate for underserved communities. Has there been a generational shift in the ways African Americans and American Africans relate? And what lessons can be learned about how communities have engaged with each other in the past and can engage with each other going forward?
Thank you, Chukkky, for the question, and thank you so much, POC, for having me here. So, speaking on the relationship between African and African Americans and detention. So I will say that my experience was somewhat different. I was raised in the South, which is a lot more rural than bigger cities throughout America. When it did come to African relations and African American relations in my hometown, I strongly believe, like, growing up, it was kind of more of a push, especially for my Black teachers, for us to get along. I felt like growing up, we knew what was at stake. And we also knew that if we turned against each other, then it's so much easier to take over someone if you were to divide each other. So I didn't necessarily grow up in an environment where I felt like, Africans are here and African Americans are there. I definitely see the way that we look and what we go through. I feel like one thing that I did grow up to was being ignorant about what was going on in other countries and not understanding the totality of the effects that were taking place in other countries that America was doing, or what America was doing to other countries. And I think it's so important that we all learn each other's background, because I feel like the tension comes from ignorance on both ends. I feel like sometimes we don't look into why people are the way they are and why we have these feelings. So looking into why African Americans feel type of way about systemic racism, or feel some type of way about the political body that we're under right now, I definitely think that's important. But I also believe it's really important to understand what we're going through in other countries and notice how we're being oppressed by the same governments, and seeing how we can work together rather than looking at what separates us and how we are different. I think we all have beautiful cultures, and I think it's important to lean into that. I don't want to be one of those people who say I don't see someone that's different from me, because I do. But because you're different from me, I want to learn more about it, and I want to see it as beautiful, and I want to see how I can help build your culture up and how you can help build my culture up. And I strongly believe that's what we should be focusing on.
I give thanks. Thank you so much, Garcelle. Everybody's just dropping bars this evening. Thank you so much. Adora, I want to turn to you next. Adora, I know you write about love, romance, sex. And I just want to ask you a really, really important question. Should we be having more Black sex? And more specifically, what is the role of love, romance, relationship, marriage to heal intergenerational wounds that are trapped in their bodies? From where I stand, I see more intermarriage between different types of Black communities. Is this a signal that we're moving in the right direction? And can romantic love and intercultural families provide a blueprint for cultural healing?
Oh, thank you for asking that question, and thank you, POC, for having me. First, I'm not here to tell anyone who they should or should not have sex with, ever. But my path as an organization development consultant and my mentor, Hike, taught me the importance of understanding my unique cultural lens, and that everyone has their own unique cultural lens. The UCL is your own collection of perception filters, biases you have accumulated over a lifetime. Your UCL reflects the rich ancestral, cultural, educational, and experiential heritage from which you emerged that informs who you are right now. These aspects, they help define the person's unique self, an authentic self. Without this, love, sex, romance, any relationship will suffer. You have to be happy with yourself. It doesn't matter what type of relationship you're in or what kind of person you are if you don't understand that. You will be unsatisfied. You will be unhappy. And not understanding one's unique cultural lens it leads to an undeveloped cultural competence. As far as intermarriage, I believe it's not a sign of things to come, but things that are happening right now. In 2015, the Pew Research has reported an increase in intermarriage within the Black community. Also, that Black men are twice as likely than Black women to intermarry. I think like the biggest change is seen more amongst non-Blacks. In 1990, 63% of non-Black adults said they would be opposed to marrying a Black person. And now that percentage is under 14%. The important with this change is, I always think in my head, how can people of the Black community be a catalyst for self-awareness, self-care, human motivation, and Black love? And I believe that starts with getting to know and respecting oneself through increased awareness of biases, prejudices, strengths and weaknesses in order to pave a way for a deeper understanding of self, love, romance, and different dynamics within the Black community.
Thank you so very much for that, Adora. We give so much thanks. We're about to wrap up, but I just want to take a couple minutes, maybe just to open up the panel. I wonder if there's anything anybody else said that you want to quickly respond to, comment on, or if there are any other lingering thoughts that you want to share before we close off the shop this evening.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing. I think it was like related to Garcelle's question, especially with kind of like the biases that we have between each other. And I feel like maybe one part that leads to those biases is like what's been fed to us through media, what's been fed to us through other people in our community. But I think that ultimately, as we move forward, like our own selves, we have to make the decision to be able to know someone from another community and to be able to like get to know their way of living and to work together. Because and one way I think that we can do that is by spending more time with each other. Right. So the more you spend time with each other, the more you see like, oh, wait, you're not so much different than me, or we have the same struggles, or we pretty much got raised in the same way. Right. So these biases and stereotypes, to be honest, some of them are true. Africans think certain ways about Black Americans and vice versa. But we need to honestly let go of those because that was in the past and it didn't serve us any good. Right. If we keep holding on to those beliefs, like what can we say that we did together? How did we progress? But it just takes like an individual decision to be able to move forward that and just say like, how can I build from now instead of like what has been in the past before.
One thing, if I can speak real quick, one thing I think all of us kind of mentioned is like getting to know each other and recognizing each other. For me, like our generation is doing the work, but I have more faith and I think we should put more energy towards the younger generation, the next generation. I have more hope for them. And one thing that I think needs to happen is like the Jewish community in America, right? They send their youth back home so they know their culture, right? So they know their people. Obviously, even like if we could do that, if we could have programs where we're sending African Americans to go to Africa, to go to Ghana, go to Nigeria, Ethiopia, spend a summer there, that'd be fantastic. Obviously, with COVID, you can't do that. But even if you have like on Zoom, right? Like if you have a classroom and they can Zoom Addis Ababa and meet kids there, right? Start that connection. These are simple things that can happen in order to bridge that gap, right? Because that's where, like, if you want to grow something, you need to start young. So if you start with the youth, they will grow into that brotherhood, into that sisterhood. But yeah, that's it. That's my.
I want to also hit off what Garcelle said. I grew up military, father was military, but we moved everywhere, and I was definitely ignorant of the divide that existed because that's just not how I was brought up. And it's really important to understand where I feel as if your ancestral and your parents come from. My dad's 75 and he was born on a plantation in Louisiana owned, and people think, wow, that can't be. Well, just because slavery ended doesn't mean the slavery mindset ended, it continued. And so things that I would not have known that if he would never have told me. So we definitely have to listen to each other as a community. So thank you for that.
Yes, and just to piggyback off what Adora and Priscille were saying earlier, I strongly believe that there has always been a want for us to connect with each other throughout generations. I know my grandfather, whenever we had a conversation about it, he was just kind of like, who told you that Africans think this way? Or who told you that Africans were this way? And then he began to question me about how many Africans were actually in my own life. And if they weren't in my life, then where did I pick up these ideas from? And where did they pick up these ideas from if they don't have any African Americans in their life? And showing how, like, it's pretty much been used as a device to separate us so that way we don't come together and work together on issues. And just how easy it is for that division. Like, it's the strongest weapon they have against us, because once we unite, it's so much harder to fight against us in all these other areas. So I really think that we really need to hone into that. And just thinking about, like, my grand uncle got his international, he got a master's in international studies in the 1960s with the hopes to be able to travel to other places. However, he lived in Alabama, which was under Jim Crow. So to know that my ancestors couldn't travel that way, I almost feel like it's my duty now that I travel the world and that I meet people, and that, we bring this conversation up because these are conversations we've all been having for generations. And I don't want my children to be born with the same worry that we're going through now.
Thank you all so much. And I think to add to what you said, Garcelle, I feel like, and I know that these are conversations that are happening across America and really across the world. We're coming of age, and we're coming to a realization that we have to be connecting with each other intentionally. We have to be meeting with each other respectfully and intentionally building those bridges. And whether it's in areas of love or in the not-for-profit sector or in public speaking or in film, we can see that these synergies are beginning to happen, and we cannot take them for granted. We have to intentionally build those bridges to and for each other. And as Priscille had said, we will be each other's salvations. So we want to thank everybody tonight for your time. Adora, Alazar, Garcelle, Priscille. Thank everybody from People of Culture for this amazing, amazing event and evening. Conversations are just happening. We will be putting our information down in the chat, I'm sure, and People of Culture will be connecting us to you folks, I'm sure, so that we can continue these conversations. I want to encourage everybody to support Priscilla's podcast, support Adora's books, support Garcelle's not-for-profit work, support Alazar's filmmaking, support Trad Magazine if you have the opportunity to, and of course, keep supporting People of Culture and keep supporting each other. Peace and love. Stay Black, beautiful, and highly melanated. And we will see you guys at the promised land. Give thanks.